بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا ثم بعد. My brothers and sisters, this khutbah is called the Way Forward Summary, and this is the summation of the 7 khutbah titled The Way Forward. Here I am going to highlight the action points only. For details, you can go to the recordings of the 7 khutbah. I will begin with my gift to you, which is my own motto in life. I will not allow what is not in my control to prevent me from doing what is in my control. I will not allow what is not in my control to prevent me from doing what is in my control. This is based on the reality that when we stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we will not be asked what happened. We will be asked, what did you do? Get ready for the long haul, therefore, because this is a generational project. So the sooner we start, the better. Never give up, because the balance will tip, inshallah. It just requires sustained effort. Work only for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For any building to take shape, first you need rocks who are willing to go into the foundation and be buried, never to be seen again, known only to the builder but nobody else. In our case, that is Allah. We must be ready to be those rocks so that the Muslim Ummah may be reconstructed. The building will stand on the shoulders of those who go into the foundation. Without them, the building will never stand. Let us remember that victory and defeat is only decided at the end and is not decided by who is left standing, but by which side you stood on. All great successes are built on skin in the game. What you do yourself and take the pain that comes with it. Because excellence is the capacity to take pain. Legends are not defined by their successes, but by how they bounce back from their failures. If ever there was a legend in the truest and most noble sense of the term, it was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Nothing illustrates these principles that I mentioned to you better than his journey to At-Taif. In the 10th year of revelation, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam decided to go to At-Taif to present Islam to the Banu Thaqif. At that time, many of the biggest names among the Sahaba had already accepted Islam and they were there. Abu Bakr, Hamza bin Abdul Muttalib, Umar ibn al-Khattab, Uthman ibn Affan, Ali ibn Talib, radiyallahu anhum ajma'in, all of them were there and others. They were all Muslim and would have given anything to be entrusted with the job of taking the message of Islam to the Banu Thaqif. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not give that job to any of them, but went himself with just one companion, Zayd bin Haritha radiyallahu anhu. We all know the story of the journey and all that happened during that, but if we talk about personal commitment to the cause demonstrated by action, there is no finer example. As for resilience, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's dua after leaving At-Taif is testimony to his faith and tawakkul and trust on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. This is the very essence of Islam and the standard that we must compare ourselves to. After all, it is the same Allah Jalla Shanuhu that we worship. But sadly, we have changed. His dua begins with, he says, "O Allah, to you alone I complain of my helplessness, the scarcity of my resources, and my insignificance before mankind. You are the most merciful of the merciful, Arhamur Rahimin. You are the Rabb of the helpless and the weak, Rabbul Mustada'afin, Rabbul Masakin, Wa Rabbi, you are my Rabb." And then he says whatever he says, and then at the end he ends the dua with, May it never be that I should incur your wrath, your anger, or that you should be angry with me. And there is no power nor resource but yours alone. See this beautiful um, dua that Rasulullah made, which shows us the focus that we need to have. This is the essence and the most beautiful example of taqwa and tawakkul that I can imagine. To always be focused on the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. Never get distracted by what the world will think and what society will say and what will people say. Nothing of that. Imagine a situation. He had been walking for about 3 days to Taif. There he and Zayd bin Haritha had been attacked and reviled, because of which both had been injured and were bleeding profusely. His emotional injuries were clearly much worse, because he was a scion of the most honorable tribe in the Hijaz and descended from the most powerful and honorable chief Abdul Muttalib, who was his own grandfather. He was famous and honored among all people before he announced Islam. He was a brave warrior, the messenger of Allah, who was on a mission as directed by his Rabb Jalla Jalaluhu to invite people to Islam. He, if anyone, had a right to expect Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help and protection. Yet when he reached Taif, he did not see the help of Allah or his protection. He was insulted, reviled in public, attacked, and was injured and had to flee his persecutors. He knew that his Rabb was seeing real time. He was witness to what was happening and had the power to stop it and to punish the attackers. Yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did nothing. He did not do that. This is the Mashiach of Allah. There is no example of Rida bil Qada that I can imagine that can be better than this. How would that have affected any other person? Just think about that. The seerah is a treasure beyond value, and that is why we must study this again and again and again. My brothers and sisters, everything begins with our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything begins with building our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and constantly strengthening it. Remaining connected is the key. That requires charging the battery of the heart with dhikr and shukr and sabr, and seeing both plenty and difficulty, ease and pain as tests from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our approach to both must be the same. That is, istighfar, tawbah, and keeping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure foremost in dealing with the situation that life presents us with. Rasulullah did 3 things when he came to Medina from Makkah. 1, he created a nation based on faith and not tribe. 2, he created a perennial source of funds. And 3, he created a structure of leadership. This was the formula which gave the early Muslim community stupendous success and changed their state from being oppressed and despised to becoming leaders of their world. This is the formula that we must replicate in our world today. Let us remember that knowledge is not the memorizing of data, but change of behavior. If you are a smoker and learn the evils of cigarettes, being able to recite them extempore does not make you learned. To be learned about cigarette smoking is to give it up and persuade others to do so. Apply this to everything in life, especially Deen, especially Islam. The knowledge of the scholar must be reflected in his or her behavior. Without that, it does not matter how much he knows, except that unpracticed knowledge will become witness against him. Once we make istighfar and tawbah and remove all disobedience from our lives, here is what we must do to change our personal and collective destiny. This is the world of action. Nothing will happen unless we do something. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَأَلَّيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى. There is nothing more for a person other than what he works for. So here are five things. Number one, eliminate shirk and bid'at from our lives and earn and eat only halal. Number, fulfill all fara'id. It begins with that because the dua of those who earn and eat haram is not accepted. Tawbah and istighfar is the beginning. Number two, dua. Make tahajjud fard on yourself and make dua. Sincere dua before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In sujood. Cry before Allah. Dua is the most powerful tool that a believer has. Rasulullah said, dua is the weapon of the believer. It is a direct line of communication between us and Allah. Allah said, Uduni astajib lakum. Ask me, I will give you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised to answer dua. So, let us make dua. Number three, awareness. Learn. There is no substitute for knowledge. Ignorance is not cute. It is ugly and revolting. Gigo, garbage in, garbage out, works in life as in programming. Quality is not an option. Quality is essential because only quality works. Number four, get involved at all levels in all activities that serve society, win hearts, and build credibility. Islam must become visible in all its beauty and become synonymous with compassion, with helping, and with standing for justice. As citizens, you have a stake in the welfare of this land, so work for it. And number five, build positive relationships with others. This is why interfaith relations, participating in community activities, town hall meetings, being on school boards, social work, establishing Muslim soup kitchens, hospices, seniors' homes, and so on, are important. All these are also excellent dawah opportunities. First, win hearts, then change destiny. You may not be interested in politics because we hear this all the time. I'm not interested in politics. You may not be interested in politics, but politics is interested in you. Those who say that I'm not interested in politics are like sheep saying, I'm not interested in the wolf. There is a word for that, dinner. If you want to survive and prosper, you must learn how and then do it. There is no choice. There is no choice. Believe me. Because there are only two kinds of people in any society, the influencers and the influenced. Isolation is suicide. History teaches one critical lesson. Only those who contribute are valued. Only they have leverage and are influential and have power. Their religion or ethnicity doesn't matter. What matters is their contribution to society on a local or global scale. Ask, what are we contributing today as Muslims? And then ask, is that enough? As I mentioned, the Seerah points to three critical initiatives. But before we go there, a word of caution. When you hear an idea that looks difficult or to you impossible, ask yourself, how can I make this work? Don't waste your time with all the reasons it won't work. Until the Wright brothers invented the first plane, flying was an impossible idea. Everything is impossible until it is done. Experience is the picture in the rear view mirror. It tells us what we did, not what we can do in the future. Present circumstances don't decide if you will succeed or fail. They only decide where you need to start. When Rasulullah stood on Safa and called people to Islam, and his own uncle denounced him, who would have thought that a day would come when every fourth person on earth would be a Muslim? Our job is to do our best and leave the rest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests our commitment, not our resources. So the three things that Rasulullah did was, first one was to build the ummah. We need to rethink how we address differences among ourselves and speak always the language of togetherness and not division. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, and there are many ayat, I am quoting only one here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَ أَخَوَيْكُمْ وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. Allah said the believers are one brotherhood. So make peace between your brothers and be mindful of Allah so that you may be shown mercy. This implies that there is conflict. Allah is not saying fan the flames. Allah is saying put out the fire. Learn to disagree without being disagreeable. Learn to forgive and not carry grudges. Learn to communicate powerfully. It's not genetic. It must be learnt. Focus on common problems and how to solve them and not on differences, especially in Aqidah, which have no solutions. Establish problem-solving structures and learn the tools. Learn problem-solving tools. Because without unity, we are toast. We are dead. Number 2, a central fund. I suggested a way, that is, every Muslim must donate $5 a day to the fund, the price of 1 cup of coffee. Every Muslim, man, woman or child. If you want to do it another way, most welcome. Please go ahead. Don't talk about why this one won't work. You find a way which will work. But we need, because the reason is, the way is not important, the fund is. Because without assured funds, long-term projects are impossible to plan and execute. Sporadic charity is not enough. Muslim organizations globally don't seem to understand this. with predictable results. Harvard, on the other hand, has an endowment fund of $50.7 billion, which surprisingly was not started 400 years ago when Harvard was started, but in 1974. We are today in 2024. $50.7 billion in this period of time. It shows the power of sustained, systematic effort. Third one, last but not the least, leadership structure. This is perhaps the hardest for us because we have become so used to having everything our own way. We don't obey anybody, we don't listen to anybody, we don't like to listen to anybody. This must change. Strange it is that obedience is an exception among people whose name is Muslim, one who submits, and whose iconic symbol is the sajda. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu ati'u Allah wa ati'u rasula wa ulil amri minkum. فَإِن تَنَازَعْتُمْ فِي شَيْءٍ فَرُدُّوهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ إِن كُنتُمْ تُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ ذَلِكَ خَيْرٌ وَأَحْسَنُ تَأْوِيلًا. Allah said, O believers, obey Allah and obey the Messenger and obey those in authority among you. Should you disagree on anything, then refer it back to Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam if you truly believe in Allah and the last day. This is the best and fairest resolution. If there is a difference of opinion, go back to the Kitab of Allah and the Sunnah of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Where there is a text, we don't use our intelligence. We follow the text. Leadership is important, but followership is even more important. Without good followers, the best of leaders will fail. That is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the blessed generation of the Sahaba, Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in, as examples to all mankind. The truth is that today's situation is much less difficult than the situation that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam faced in the 7th century. He showed us the way. He was successful. It is for us to follow and become successful. وصلى الله على نبي الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا رب العالمين.